have you ever heard a sermon preached on your cell phone storage? No? Good. You're about to hear one. I'm about to give you an analogy, a comparison. Before I share this with you, what I don't want you to do is when I'm done with it, go home and then throw your cell phone away and think that you're more holy or have a lot of character because you did what the preacher said, because that's not. You'll get what I'm saying here in a minute. But when it comes to our cell phones, like my very first cell phone, I can't remember fully, but I think this might have just been my iPod, but my cell phone had 4 gigs of storage. Anybody remember those days? Or maybe it was 4 or 8, which meant you could have 50 songs and 50 pictures, right? This was before streaming music, and you had to download the songs on your device, and like no storage. But we thought it was awesome, and so then my second cell phone, my second smartphone, I think I had 16 gigs of storage, which was like freaking amazing. And now I could have 100 pictures and 100 songs. But the problem was still like when you have you ever gone to like a concert or an important event and you were going to record and you were going to take pictures, and like the very first picture you took, your phone goes, your phone is almost out of storage. You know what I mean? Like you are almost at your limit. You're like, no. And so what do? Like you start deleting a bunch of crap because you've got to get yourself in the picture with the band to prove you were there, right? Or it's an important event for your kids, so you got to make room so you can record what's happening and prove that you were there. So then, like my next phone then, and I don't buy I could care less about what generation a phone is. I just get a phone when I need a phone. But my next phone, I went straight to like the 120, 128 gig. And then at the same time, that was at the same time like the iCloud really took off. And so I've got 128 gigs of storage on my phone, plus anything extra goes to the iCloud. It's all stored. And so then here's what happened, though. My phone, it took a little bit longer, but at some point in time, my phone reached capacity. And so did iCloud, right? There were still, with all of that storage, it took me a while longer, but I had a moment where I was at an event, and I was getting ready to take some pictures and some video, and my phone said, you're almost out of storage, and I'm freaking out, right, trying to delete. And so my point is this. Has anybody ever spent the $10 on like a terabyte of, don't do that, that's stupid. You have too much the way it is. I wonder if the way we handle our data storage reflects something about the way that we handle our lives. So don't go home and like create a bunch of space in your storage of your phone and think that you're more holy now, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm making a comparison. I wonder if we live our lives in the same way that we kind of utilize the storage on our phones. Like, here's what I'm saying. You and I have 24 hours in a day. We have this much time in a day. And every week we make this much money, right? And because we have it, we use it all. We schedule it all. Like, we max it all out. And most of us have none to spare. Like, not only do we have extra time or extra money, but we also don't have any extra energy because we're exhausted. We've exhausted our schedules, we've exhausted our money, and we've exhausted ourselves in the hustle of it all. Like, our personal storage, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, is at capacity. Like, we are empty, or we are full, it's too full, but yet at the same time feeling empty, like we don't have anything left to give. And you and I can't buy more space, we can't buy more energy, although they try to make you think you can at those 6 hour, it's in a bottle about this big, right? That's not true. Let me ask you this. How many of you would say that you occasionally or often feel pretty stressed? Let me see hands. Feel pretty stressed. My hand's up. How many of you would say you occasionally or often feel financial tension or stress? Yeah, when the bills start rolling in. How many of you would say, I wish I had either more time for myself or more time to spend with the people that I love? See, we live in a culture that pushes us to the limits. Like, buy more, do more, accomplish more, conquer more, more, more. And because our culture's selling this to us, we need to do more, buy more, experience more. We have bought it because we have what's called FOMO. You know what that is? Anybody say it out loud? Anybody know what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. Like they tell us we're missing out, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out. And so we go more and more and more. We buy into the lie, and because we're afraid of missing out. And what's ironic about us living this hectic, chaotic pace for fear of missing out is in that pace for fear of missing out, I would contend that we are missing out on something even greater. We really are missing out over here. Like the pace of our lives is draining us, and I would say that for most of us, we are living at an unbiblical and unsustainable pace. And it may be normal, the world may all be doing it, but it's insane. And many of you are killing yourselves, it's destroying your marriages, and for some of you, it's destroying your faith and your relationship with the Lord. I even wonder what it might be doing to our kids, like the pressures that we impose on our kids to make the grade and be in every club, plus be out 4 or 5 nights a week for practices and activity on top of the homework they have to be. And like the schedules that we impose on our kids, we end up imposing them on us, and we're stressed, and they're stressed. Like if someone were to say to you, are you enjoying your life? You'd be like, no, and I don't have time to talk about it because I got to go. You're on the fly. We live in an unsustainable pace. We're in a rush. We're in a hurry. And at the same time, we're on the edge. Like we're agitated and we're weary. And often we feel like we can't take much more. Like we're exhausted. Because we have very little free space in our lives. Most of us have filled our lives with things that are not bad. They're okay things. But because we filled our lives with okay things, we don't have room or free space for the most important things. And that's what this sermon series is going to be about. It's called Free Space. We're going to be talking about what we need to stop doing in order to take up the things that we ought to be doing, to make room for the things that God's calling us to do. Like free space. This series is about you having money left over at the end of the month, sitting on the countertop and saying, how could we bless somebody else with this? Free space is having time for yourself to just be or just breathe. It's you having free space or free time to be with others. It's you having the room and the capacity in your life left over so that when one of your friends has a surprise, something surprising happens in their lives, you can, in the moment, drop what you're doing and show up and just be with them. Be there for them. Like free space is you slowing down and sitting with Jesus and not in a rush to leave. The problem is free space is not what most of us have. If you have your Bibles, turn to Luke chapter 10. It'll be on the screen here too, but in Luke chapter 10, we're going to look at a story about two different women in the same house at the same time, in the same context, the same setting. Of those two women, one is too busy, and the other one, though, chooses to free up space, and because she did, she experiences something that she will never forget, and it'll never be taken away from her. And this is the story in Luke chapter 10. It's a familiar Bible story. It's Luke chapter 10, beginning with verse 38. It says this: as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, Jesus came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. And she had a sister called Mary, and Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. All right? So here's two women, same house, and they both have the exact same opportunity. Jesus is there. Mary sits with Jesus. Like Mary takes advantage of the opportunity that Jesus is there. Could Mary have had other things to do, like help in the kitchen, finish tidying up, right? You know, like at our house when we host our small group at our house, we shop and we get the house ready because we want to be good hosts and be hospitable. But there's always that last hour, that last 30 minutes before people show up, and there's a few last little things like, what are we going to do with this? And so you open up a closet and extra blankets and pillows and whatever, dirty clothes, right? And then you close the door and hope nobody opens it because they'll die because of all the stuff that'll fall on them. Like there were other things that Mary could have done. But in that moment, Mary said, I'm not going to do that. Forget all that. I'm going to take this moment and I'm just going to enjoy being with Jesus. Martha, on the other hand, though, like many of us, Martha was distracted. Martha was kind of on edge because she had company. And it would make sense because her company wasn't just any company. It was the King of the universe. It was the Son of God. It was the Lord Jesus Christ, right? And so you might look at that story and go, yeah, she's on edge. She should be on edge. That would be understandable. That would be normal for her to be that way. And what's interesting is that Martha is not distracted by bad things or evil things or sinful things. She's actually distracted by things that we might say are good things. You and I might have been distracted by the exact same things if Jesus was in our house, right? Making sure everything is just right for our guests. The problem, though, is, and we'll see this in just a little bit, is that Martha was distracted with good things, and it kept her from experiencing the best things. I've heard this for years, and I don't know who first said it, but it's probably true for most of us, especially in our fast-paced culture. Somebody once said, if Satan cannot make us bad, then he will make us busy. And I wonder if that's true for a lot of us. Like, we miss out on the most important things because we're distracted from the very best things. Like for me, like my work and family has always been this juggling act or this balancing act. And there have been times where I've been good at turning off my phone, shutting my computer, and just kind of not get rid of all the distractions. There have been times where my son will come in and say, hey, Dad, you want to throw baseball? And I shut it all down like, yeah, let's go, buddy, let's go throw baseball. And there have been times where I've been good at that, and there have been times where I haven't. My daughter will come in and say, hey, Dad, you want to go outside and kick the soccer ball around? And there have been times where I've said, nah, I can't right now. I've got to send these emails. I got to write these texts. And I've left her hanging, right? Probably, and honestly, I probably missed a moment. And there have been moments where I've missed. And so for a lot of us, we get consumed and we get obsessed with accomplishing the urgent. Like the urgent for many of us is what becomes the most important thing. But the problem is the urgent isn't always what's most important. What we think is important isn't always the most important thing, and so we miss out on what is. In verse 40, Martha, right, in the kitchen, Mary sitting on the floor at Jesus' feet. Martha comes in a huff, and she says to Jesus, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me! Exclamation mark. Like, does it sound here like Martha thinks what she's doing in the kitchen is the most important thing? Like, what she's doing is way more important than what Mary's doing. Like, do you hear Martha saying, Jesus, I'm in here doing all this by myself. Look at me, and look what Mary's doing. What's the message to Mary? What's Mary doing? Being lazy. That's what Martha's trying to get Jesus to see. I'm working hard. Mary is being lazy because she's not helping me. Like, she's trying to get Jesus to take her side. And this is, in this sermon series, look, this is where you're going to be challenged. Like, in your life, in your lifestyle right now, you are sold out to this is the way people ought to live. Like, this is the way it is. You think this is the way people have to live in our culture. And busyness leads to success. More of this and more of that, and you're convinced that these things are what truly matter. And these things are completely necessary to be successful in this world. And you're doing this hustle. You're living in this fast pace because everybody's doing it. The culture says this is the way it ought to be done, And then Romans chapter 12 slaps us in the face and says, yeah, but don't be conformed to that. Just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's the best or the most excellent or God's way. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Instead, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Let me show you something new. Let me show you something different. Let me show you the way it ought to be, is what this passage is saying. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. All right, so just because everybody else is doing it and living at that pace and living in that chaos and living with no free space at all in their finances or in their calendar, or just because that's the pattern that the world is following, it doesn't mean that it's God's best and what God desires for you. And this whole series is going to challenge you to think differently. It's going to challenge you to act differently. And not just in little ways or minor ways. Like if you could change things by just making some minor tweaks in your life, you're smart. You would have already done that. And we're talking about significant, radical, life-altering decisions and changes, because honestly, many of us, the way we're doing life is contrary to the way God planned for you. The story goes on in verses 41 and 42. It says, Jesus says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Matter of fact, really only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Mary sitting with Jesus, making time to be with Jesus, was way more important, far more important than anything else. And Martha was missing it. One of the lessons we learn from this story with Mary, Martha, and Jesus is this: the choice is yours. You're in control of your schedule, and you're in control of your time. You're in control of your money and where it goes. You're in control of your free space. Like, the choice is yours. And you hearing that, some of you are thinking, some of you are like, you don't know my life. You don't know me. You work one day a week. You don't know how the rest of the world works, right? I would fight you if you said that to my face, but that comes, right? You tend to, the guard goes up. Like, you don't understand. You don't know my life. You don't know what it's like to have financial pressure. I can't make these changes that you're talking about, but the choice is yours whether or not you do. The choice has always been yours. Like, let's look at this practically. Like, in your life, if you choose not to create free space in your life, what happens? What are the consequences of you not freeing up space and living in a way that God has called you to live? Here are a couple principles or a couple things that happen. Less free space creates more stress. You feel me on this? Like, less free space creates more stress. For some of you, let me talk real practically. For some of you, not as much you, but the first service, because they decided to get up early and come to that service, which was lame. They could have slept in and come to this service. But for some of you, this principle played out this morning when you were running late for church. You feel me now? All right? Like, and you were late, and I'm not mad about it, so know that. And I'm not blaming you, right? I'm not blaming you for being here late. I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming everybody else that lives in your house that were slowpokes today. Like, you were in the van, ready to go, waiting on the rest of those people in your house who couldn't get it together. So I'm not blaming you. I'm actually kind of blaming that little one who can't dress herself. And a lot of times when you get her dressed and ready, it's at that moment she decides to spit up on her clothes, and then you got to change her again. She's the one who caused you to be late. Am I right? Like, so I'm not blaming anybody, but maybe her. But if you got here late with little or no time to spare, many of you rush in here frustrated, already angry, and you're on the fly. And by the time you come in here, you're sweating from checking in your kids. And the principle this principle played out true for you this morning. Like, when you don't create space, you create stress. It increases. And this is true of time. It's also true of money financially. When you spend to the limit, or when you overspend, you do not leave any financial free space, and it creates tension for you, and not just you, but your marriage, your family. Some of you know that. The second principle is this: less free space causes less relational intimacy. Like, think about that. Those of you that are busy, you're frustrated and you're challenged. Like, for you, your mind rarely disengages from the things that you think are important. And because of that, you can be sitting with the most important person in your life. You can be physically present but not emotionally. You can be sitting across the table from them but not be engaged at all, because you're so busy and your mind won't stop running. Like, you're physically present but not emotionally available. Like, even when you go on vacation, you're so busy today that it takes you 3 days to wind down and be present with your family, but then you think, oh my gosh, I've only got 3 days left, and you start winding back up. Like, you cannot disconnect, even with your family, to be present with them. Like, do this. Here's an experiment. Next time you go to a restaurant, you and your spouse, you and your family, just do this little experiment. Put your phone down and look around the room and see what the other families are doing. And 75% of them will be sitting together but not together because they'll be looking at their screens. They're not looking at each other. And they're not doing anything bad by looking at their screens. But they are missing out on the most important thing sitting right in front of them. Less free space causes less relational intimacy. And not just with your families, but also with God. Like, this happens all the time with me. Like, somebody that I haven't seen in months shows back up to church, and I'll say, hey, man, haven't seen you for a while. Oh, yeah, I know. I got busy. I've been busy. Or I'll talk to somebody about their relationship with the Lord. You know, how are things going with you and the Lord? Are you in Jesus? Are you still feeling close to Jesus and working on your relationship? No. You know, we used to be tight, and I used to read the Word. I used to be in the Word all the time, almost every day, and used to pray all the time. And, you know, I used to feel close to God, but I just don't anymore because I just got too, like, we become too busy for people. And we even become too busy for God. And here's the problem. We think that's normal. Like, why do we think that's normal? Who said that's normal? Who told us that's how we should live our lives? Like, why do most of us plan on slowing down one day, but rarely do we ever do it? Like, why is it that very few people take the house that they cannot afford and sell it and downsize in order to create some financial freedom or financial free space? Like, how can we say that money doesn't make me happy, yet at the same time fight and scrape to get even more of it? Like, why is it that we do not radically cut back on our schedules to spend more time with our children who are growing up quickly and will be out of our houses soon? Why is it that we're so tired and sick all the time? The bottom line is this: we do not fully trust the Lord. That's what it boils down to. Like, it's like we think God will not keep us, will not hold us up, will not come through. Like, we don't have enough faith and really believe that God is on the throne and that He will handle the details of our lives, and that doing life His way is better than doing life our way. We're afraid if we don't stop going, and making it happen and doing the hustle, then we will be left wanting for more. And the problem is, as we go and we conquer and we achieve, enough is never enough. Like, the chase never ends for fear that we are going to miss out on something that we're longing for. The problem is we're always longing for the next thing. And the pace that many of us lead chasing after the next thing is insane. And most of you, think about this. Most of us make more money today than we've ever made in our entire lives. Yet you battle with more financial stress today than you ever have. That makes no sense. Most of you have better opportunities today to do great things, yet you are more empty and more exhausted. Why? It's because we're filling our lives with things that don't matter. And they're not bad things, but what we've done is we've taken good things and we've elevated them to a place where we think they're the best things. And so we're distracted by all of the production and all of the things that the world is trying to get us to chase after and all of the things that the world is promoting. Bigger house, better car, and then my marriage will be better and I'll feel good about myself. And I've got to make this meeting because there are going to be some high-profile guys there and I'm concerned about how they will look at me or what they'll think of me, and I want them to think of me well because their opinion matters and my self-worth hinges on what they think of me. And I got to put my kids in the best schools and give them the best of opportunities because them being the best athlete or the best actor or the best student is way more important than their spiritual life or their relationship with the Lord. I've got to have a perfect body. I'm going to chase after the perfect body. I'm going to work out and spend all my time working out because in my mind, my body is more important than my soul. It's twisted. I've got to produce more and more and more and more because I'm empty. I'm trying to fill myself up, but I just keep getting more and more empty. When you take something that's not bad but even good, and you place it in a place of utmost importance, which is not a place that belongs, you know what that's called? That's called idolatry. And idolatry is when you make something more important than God. And that thing that we place in a position of more important than God, here's the deal with that thing. It cannot satisfy. It will not fulfill. It will leave you wanting for more. It cannot come through for you. You will continue to chase and hustle if that's your God and the most important thing in your life. And that chase and that hustle is killing marriages, it's hurting families, and it's leaving us empty because it is not what God intended. And I'd venture to say that a lot of us walk in here smiling, but we smile because we feel like turn it up on Sundays, but really on the inside we're empty, and we're lonely, and we're drained, and we're exhausted. The good news is this, and I love this passage. The invitation and the promise is this. Matthew 11:28 through 29, Jesus makes this invitation and promise, and he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Stop learning from the world. Stop chasing the world. Chase me. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. And if you do, you will find rest for your souls. This month, that's what we're going to be talking about. This month, that's what we're calling you to. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are stressed out and overwhelmed, and all of you who can't get it all done. Come to me, single parents who are about to fall apart. Come to me, business owners who feel like you're about to lose it all. Come to me, mom, you mothers who have no free space for yourself. Come to me, all of you who are overwhelmed. Come to me, all of you who find your significance in how busy you are, yet in your busyness you're draining yourself and you're exhausted. Don't find your worth in that. Find your worth in me. Come to me, all of you who feel insignificant if you're not busy all the time." Jesus says, "Come to me, all of us." It's an invitation to all of us. And when we do, he says he will give us rest. And I love this passage. And I quote this passage to myself all of the time because I get tired and find myself exhausted often. And in this passage is an invitation. Jesus is saying, I want you here. I want you with me. And I want you to just come and sit at my feet. And when you do, don't bring anything. Because I want you to come sit at my feet. And I just want you to be. And I just want you to breathe. He says, if you will come here and be with me, you don't have to produce. You don't have to hustle. You don't have to be something you're not. You don't have to impress me with how hard you work. You don't have to show me how much you've made or how much you have or all that you do have. Jesus says, I could care less about all that. In fact, if you would just come and sit with me, if you will let me, I will show you what's most important. And you'll begin to want to let go of what you at one time thought was important. If you will come sit with me, I will release you from all that stress and all that hustle. Like, this is an invitation from Jesus. And it's a promise to set you free so that you can rest. Look, does anybody in here think that's a good idea? Does anybody in here think that sounds like a better way? Like anybody in here need that? Raise your hand. Anybody in here need that? Anybody in here feeling weary and fatigued? Anybody in here feeling beaten up and eaten up and spit out by the world? Anybody in here feel like you're just ready to call it quits? Jesus says, don't call it quits. The lesson from Mary and Martha is, don't call it quits. Just change what you're after. Free up space so that you can be with Jesus. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for loving us and making yourself available and wanting to ease our anxieties and our worries. Fill us up when we're weary. Slow us down when we can't run anymore. Hold us when we're tired. Help us to live at a pace that is healthy, and not just healthy, but live our lives at a pace that honors you, and a pace that reflects the fact that you are the most important thing to us. And live at a pace that is counter to our culture and is appealing to our culture. Help us to live at a pace. Help us to change things in our lives maybe that maybe at one time were important, but today's the day we change and we begin to look at and sit with and enjoy the things that are most important. Our Lord and our Savior and our family and our kids, friends, spouses. Give us time. Help us make time and carve out time for those things. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.